When you're just starting out as a knitter, there's a lot to navigate on your journey. And one of those things is how to shop for a knitting pattern that is going to be just right for you as a beginner knitter. And so for today's video, we're gonna dive right into Ravelry, an online knitting community and pattern database. And I'm gonna show you some tips on how to narrow down your search for a knitting pattern that is just right for you and your level and where you are on your knitting journey. So grab a cup of something cozy and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting channel here on YouTube. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. This marks the beginning of a new series I'm bringing to the channel this summer called The Beginner's Guide. And this is where I share with you my take on steps and tips and things to look for as you begin your knitting journey. It's not going to be a fully exhaustive series, but it is going to be my favorite tips and tricks for those of you just starting out, because it's front of mind as I think about what I would suggest to beginners knitters, and that is how to shop for patterns on Ravelry and ways that you can use Ravelry and the filter resources that are available there as tools to help you find patterns that are just right for your level and your skill set. So let's go ahead and go over here. I'm going to pop my screen up so you can see what I see, and we're going to do a little pattern shopping together. Now, again, Ravelry is an online knitting community that is way more than that. It also provides a huge database for knitting patterns. If there is a knitting pattern available, for the most part, you can find it on Ravelry. Now, there are exceptions to that. There are some people who choose to publish patterns elsewhere. There's some patterns that are only in print and not available on Ravelry. So there are some exceptions, but for the vast majority of patterns, there's some reference to them here on Ravelry. And if it's available, if it's published and available to folks, then you should be able to access it here on Ravelry. So here we are. We are at the patterns section for Ravelry. This is what everybody sees when you get to the desktop version of Ravelry. Now, when you get to the, when you use the Ravelry app, which is what I typically use when I do pattern rundown videos here on the channel, it looks different. But I think that when I show you what I'm doing here today, and if you want to learn a little bit more about how to use the Ravelry app, I'll link to a video. I'll pop it up at the top of the screen here. You can check that out. I think you'll feel pretty confident with using some of the tools here. Okay, now, one of the things about searching for patterns as a new knitter is sometimes you tend not to know what to look for. You might have some ideas of things that you would like to knit. Maybe you want to knit a pair of mittens, or you want to knit a scarf, or you want to knit some washcloths or a hat or whatever. Maybe you have an idea in mind of what you'd like to knit. And you think, okay, well, what I'm going to do is go to this place where I can search for patterns, type in that thing that I'm looking for, and then bada bing, bada boom, I have, options. Well, you're going to have a lot of options. And in the beginning, it's really important to narrow those options down, or you're going to get lost in the noise, as I like to say. Using a search filter is really a very useful tool, generally speaking, when you're searching for anything on any database, but especially on Ravelry. And so that's where we're going to start today, is using a filter. Now, I did mention to you when it was things to consider before starting the search, I mentioned consider what it is that you want to knit. Well, let's say that you don't know what you want to knit and you want to be inspired, but you also want to limit the noise. That's what we're going to start with right now. And again, we're going to filter our search results. So I want you to go over here to search patterns. And this is where you can type in a name. You can type in anything. Maybe you want to type in socks and be really general, and you want to search Ravelry for all the socks. Now, you'll see here, and this is not what I would suggest you do, but this is an example. I am searching for socks. You can see that right up here. And it's sorting it by what is referred to as the best match. So it's going to go through all the patterns in the database and find patterns that match socks best. Now, I can change that if I wanted to. I could change that to hot right now. So that's going to be all of the more popular patterns and designs that feature the word socks in them. So that's going to be something that may or may not match what you're looking for. For example, this is a shawl. So just because you type in socks doesn't always mean you're only going to be shown socks. And that's why I'm going to show you the filter in just a moment. But this is what happens when you type a word in and you just click, return or enter or whatever. This is what you are provided. And of course, you can sort that by best match, hot right now, new to Ravelry, alphabetical order, random order, most popular, most projects, all of these different things, which is great. But what I'd suggest you do, and I'm going to go back here to just the patterns page so that you can see from the beginning. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go back to patterns. I was clicking the wrong thing. Okay. So instead of typing anything into the search box, let's start someplace else. I want you to tap or click on advanced search. So we're going to go there first. Now, when you do this, what's going to happen is you're going to be just presented with lots of patterns. You can see right here, there's 2,084 pages of patterns. Don't worry about that yet. What you want to look at now is what's going on over here in the left column of the search over here. This is where it says filter your search. That is where we are going to start. Now, whether you're a beginner or an experienced knitter, a veteran or whatever, this is a really important thing to consider when you're searching for patterns on Ravelry or any kind of database on the internet. There's lots of criteria that you can select over here, and that is good news. You don't have to worry about selecting something from all of these options, but it's a really great place to start. Okay, again, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna just browse. I am a beginner knitter. I don't know what it is that I want in it yet. I just wanna browse reasonable options for me and my difficulty level. So I'm gonna head over here to the filters. I think I'm not going to adjust the categories right now. I'm just gonna let it give me whatever it gives me, regardless of category at this point. We'll adjust that in a moment. However, for yardage, I'm gonna choose anything from 0 to 150 yards and 150 to 300 yards because I'm a new knitter and I only have 2 skeins of worsted weight yarn. And actually, if I have 2 skeins of worsted weight yarn, I'm gonna click 300 to 450 as well. You really wanna stick with smaller projects. Try not to go anywhere beyond 600 yards. Try to stick to 600 yards or less in the beginning. 600 yards is going to give you a generous size of a project depending on the weight of the yarn that you're using, but try not to be too ambitious with the size of the project. Again, you want to develop and build experience, but you don't want to burn yourself out. And you also want to have that satisfaction of completing something in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling down here, passing the My Notebook section. That's a whole nother video. We are knitting, so I'm going to, in the craft section right over here, I'm just going to select knitting. Now you're going to notice your results are they are what they are based on your previous selection. So as you select more qualifiers in your filter, the amount of your result pool, I guess you could say, is going to become smaller, which is a good thing. You don't want, a million and one options. Okay. Now, this is where I wanted to discuss something, and this is obviously a preferential thing. But in the beginning, I would try to stick with free patterns, and I have a really good reason for that. Not just because it's going to save you money. I mean, that's always great. If it's for free, it's for me. But because if you stick with free patterns, you can download the pattern and actually look at the pattern, see how the designer writes the pattern, see if it has all of the things that we're looking for at our ability level. And if it doesn't, and if it seems too complex or it's not very easy to understand, you can delete the download and no harm done. But if you purchase a pattern, even if it's a cheap pattern, it just kind of feels like annoying that you have it in your library. You purchased it thinking it was going to work for you, and it doesn't upon further inspection. And now you just paid $2, $3, $5, $6 for a pattern that's not right for you right now. So in the beginning, just stick with some free patterns. So we're going to go ahead and select free, and we have 67,996 options available to us still, which is obviously a lot. Okay, has photo. Yes, of course. Okay, attributes. I mean, if you're a beginner knitter, you don't really know what attributes, well, I don't mean you don't know. You shouldn't try to filter down by attributes yet until you know what kinds of skills you want to develop. So in the beginning, I would stick with things that are simple, that help you build momentum. And then as you want to add new techniques to your skill set, then you can kind of start focusing on attributes. Now, but let's say we want to be in the beginning, maybe a little bit more adventurous. Maybe we would like to do something that has, let's go to design elements, and you can click on these and kind of see what they mean. Like crochet techniques is not going to be relevant here. Construction, what does that mean, construction? Well, here, these are all of the different things that are being listed under construction. And you may know what some of these are and you may not. Eventually, they will come up in your knitting journey and you can address them as they come up. But for the most part, these are going to just be all kinds of construction options, available to you. And honestly, I would just really kind of avoid this in the beginning until you get your feet under you a little bit more. But what I was going to say is if you want to add maybe a little bit of challenge, maybe you want to add some ribbing to your project. Maybe you want something that has ribs in there. Knit one, purl one, ribs. And I'm not sure if that would come under, maybe fabric characteristics. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so right here it says ribbed and ribbing. In the beginning, you're not really necessarily going to know what to look for here, but maybe you do. Maybe you like the look of ribbed, hats or something like that. And we want to include some ribbing in there just to give us a little bit of an extra challenge. And that's it. Then maybe that's the one skill we're going to build with this next project. Again, if you don't even want to dive down that, leave attributes blank. Don't even touch it. Okay, next, age, size, and fit. Perhaps you're knitting this for yourself or for a baby, a child, a doll, a newborn, what have you. You can select whichever one fits the bill. Ease. You may or may not understand ease in the beginning, and in the beginning of your knitting journey, you may not be knitting garments. And ease is not just a garment thing. What ease is it going to be loose or is it going to be tight? Is it going to fit loose on the body or is it going to fit close next to skin? Kind of like body contouring, whatever. So if you want whatever it is, if it's a top or a garment to fit tight against your skin, you're going to want negative ease. If you want it to fit just right on your body, just not too tight, not too loose, you want it to be neutral ease or no ease. If you want it to fit maybe more open, a little bit more loose, then you want positive ease. This is one for a whole nother video, in my opinion, and for the sake of what we're doing here, avoid this right now. You don't need to worry about it right now. Now let's go to weight. Because again, I just passed over the ease section here. I mean, I guess I could have changed like the fit, but again, these are all very specific and I just don't think you need to worry too much about that in the beginning. Gender, is it for a female, a male, or is it unisex? You can click on that if that helps to narrow things down for you. But this age and size and fit, it's not super necessary in the beginning because Ravelry is going to give you everything it has regardless of that if you leave that section alone. So you can narrow it down by those things if you want, or you can leave them alone. I don't think for the sake of what we're doing now, it's that important. Okay, moving on. Weight. Again, this is not the weight of the project. This is the weight of the yarn that is being used in the project. You can choose here to just do any gauge, any weight. It doesn't matter. Show me what you got, Ravelry. I don't care. I don't have any yarn specified, but again, remember, I mentioned we have 2 skeins of worsted weight yarn. So instead of just a free-for-all, I am going to narrow it down to worsted weight. I'm a new knitter. I was given 2 skeins of worsted weight yarn as a gift to get me started. I want to use what I have. I'm narrowing it down by worsted weight yarn. You can narrow it down accordingly based on what you have or what you would like to use. So I click on worsted. And now it's going to be providing me with 2,375 options. So my option pool has really decreased. And again, that's a good thing. And most to all of my options will be available in worsted weight yarn with all of these other filtered characteristics considered. Okay. Now we're going to skip over yarns held together because that's just not important for us right now. If anything, I would just click single strand only. That means that if I see a pattern that uses worsted weight yarn, it is using a single strand of worsted weight yarn. It's not using a DK weight yarn with a fingering weight yarn or a DK weight yarn with a lace weight yarn held together. It is just going to be using a single strand of yarn. In the beginning, that's what you want. So I would definitely just specify that here. Don't get into holding yarns double yet. I mean, give yourself like a couple of projects before you dive down that rabbit hole. I mean, do you, it's just my advice. Okay, I'm gonna skip over meterage because I'm using yards here. Again, just use what works. Okay, now here we are with colors used. I'm gonna stick to one color. I'm just starting out. I'm already adding ribbing to my, skill set here. I'm not gonna go into color work just yet. So I want this to be a single color project. So I selected one color and I still have 1,400 options. Things are good. And that is where I'm going to stop. I'm not really gonna worry about nope. I take that back. I am going to go down to the difficulty level. I apologize. I'm not going to worry too much about fiber content right now, and I'm not going to worry too much about needle size right now. I'm just going to go down here to the difficulty section, and I'm going to worry about this. Now, this is where I can rate I can filter my search by difficulty level. Don't click unknown, because even though it gives you lots of options, just don't click unknown, because we do really want to narrow it down. So I'm going to click piece of cake, easy, and number 3. Okay, those are all of the things in the beginner range. I mean, even some of these mediums are beginner friendly once you have a little bit of experience, but let's really keep things simple. And if you find that the results you have here are too simple and you want to step it up a notch, then come over here and click medium and add some more difficulty to the options that are available to you. But for right now, we're going to stick with piece of cake, easy, and difficulty level 3. And that is all we are going to filter today. So let's go ahead and scroll all the way back up, and we've done all of those filters. The only thing we have not done is typed something specific into the search box, and that's okay. That's not what we're doing right now, because what we're doing right now is browsing what's available to us with all of those things considered. So going over here, you can see at the top of the screen, these are all of the qualifiers that we selected. We want to find something that has ribbing. We're curious about ribbing and we'd like to give it a try. We've done a lot of stockinette stitch washcloths, and now we're trying to mix it up to add a little bit of a pattern to our stitches. We also want these patterns to be free. We want to use one color. We're doing the craft of knitting. Levels 1, 2, or 3 difficulty. We definitely want it to have a photo. Working with worsted weight yarn, 0 to 450 yards, and we want single strands of yarn held, not double strands, nothing like that. Let's see what we have. So these are our options here. Now it's going to give you lots of very typical patterns for that yardage of yarn. So you're going to see lots of socks and mittens and hats, and that's fine. And then of course, smaller garments like this. But you can see here, most of what is available here incorporates some form of ribbing. You can tell that these are smaller projects. These all look like worsted weight projects. I don't see anything here as I scroll that looks like it's being paired with a mohair yarn or anything like that. I do notice that even though we're looking for beginner patterns, I'm seeing lots of stitch patterns. I'm seeing cables. I'm seeing things that might look intimidating to a beginner. That's going to happen, and that's okay. I mean, if you really want to simplify things further than this, go back over to the left side here to your difficulty level and narrow that down even more. Let's take off level 3. Let's see if some of those more difficult stitch patterns go away. Because, difficulty level is relative. Like, everybody's going to have their own opinion of what's easy and what's difficult. But I do notice that when I take it down, I don't see cables. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's more to where we are. So you just kind of have to adjust that difficulty level. If you notice that some of these are like, whoa, that's a little out of my league, let's adjust that difficulty level down so I feel a little bit more comfortable with what's being offered. Okay, actually what I'm going to do now, instead of looking at these offerings here, now I'm going to show you what happens if we change the category here. Now, let's say you do want to narrow this down by category. You can choose clothing, accessories, medical, home, toys and hobbies, pets, and components. What is components? I would like to know more about that. Oh, it's like if you're knitting pieces of things that you put together. I don't really understand. Okay, we're going to stick with accessories. So I'm a new knitter and I would like to focus on accessories. And instead of doing all accessories, I'm going to stick with neck and torso accessories. And I'm going to go to cowl. That's a great beginner knitter pattern type. So I'm going to tap on cowl, and then I'm going to go out, and that's where I'm going to leave it. So I narrowed my search down by category. So most all of everything I see here is going to be a cowl. So now I'm going through, and it's still going to have all of those other characteristics included as well. So I'm scrolling through here, and I'm going to find something that appeals to me as a beginner knitter. This. I really like this. It's called the broken rib cowl. I'm looking for some ribbing. I don't know what broken rib is because I'm a new knitter, so I want to see what this looks like right now. So I open it up. This is by Michelle Kaiser, the broken rib cowl. Okay, so it uses my worsted weight yarn that I required in the yardage that I required. It doesn't give me any notes down here, but again, this is a free Ravelry download. So if I would like to know more about this pattern, I can simply click on the free link, download the PDF, and read through it to see if it has what I need in a pattern as a beginner. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. So that's great that I have a free option here for that. Before I open any kind of download though, I want to look off to the side here and see what the difficulty rating is. Okay, so right down here, here's my average difficulty from 76 ratings. This is what people are thinking. Looking at the difficulty ratings, most users considered it to be very easy, so that looks good for me. Clarity ratings, 2 users thought it to be very clear. And then overall ratings, most users loved it. That looks good. I like that. If I head up here to the comments section, there's only 2 comments. Simple and looks good. The green you used is awesome. Thank you for another really great winter warmer. Okay, not really very helpful here. Just, it's nice though. Nice thoughts. And then these are the projects that folks have worked on and have created from that pattern. I can scroll through here. If I see one of these that I like let's say MMPD's Carolyn Cowl. I'm going to open that up and see how she did. I just followed pattern, casting on 110 stitches, and I used exactly 1 skein. That's helpful. She used 1 skein of yarn that's worsted weight, 210 yards. That gives you an idea of how much yarn you're actually going to require. Of course, everybody's gauge is different, so that could vary, but that could be helpful information. Okay, so now I'm back at the patterns page, and for whatever reason, my filter was reset, but we know how to filter our searches now. So I'm gonna do this really quick for this next one, and then we're gonna dive into a particular pattern and talk about what you might wanna see in a knitting pattern to know that it's going to be something that you can tackle as a beginner knitter. So we're going to just review this. I'm going to narrow this down by accessory. For this particular part, I want to knit a hat. So I'm going to click on hat. These are all the different kinds of hats that you can knit. I'm not even going to get into that. So I'm just going to hit all hat and then X that out. I want it to be anywhere from 0 yards to 300 yards for this particular case. I'm skipping over my notebook as I mentioned before. Focusing on the craft of knitting. I want this pattern to be free because I want to test it out and read it before I commit to purchasing anything. I would like this. I'm not even going to worry about attributes here. I want to stick with my difficulty level. I'm not ready for attributes yet because I'm a beginner, and let's just say I don't know what I'm ready for. I want to see what it provides me and not add any additional attributes just yet. Again, I'm sticking with worsted weight yarn. Single strand of yarn held. I don't want to hold anything double. I only want to use 1 color here. Again, we're keeping it simple intentionally. So those of you that like to really amp up the volume when it comes to difficulty level, you can do that. Do that accordingly. But right now we're trying to keep it simple. And I'm not going to worry about fiber content or needle size. I'm going to stick to piece of cake and easy. That's where we're going to go for this one. And because I really want to kind of send home that I want it to be a hat, I'm going to type hat into the search box. It kind of helps to narrow it down even further and hit search. Okay, now over here, you'll remember when I said that you can sort it by best match and hot right now. Just stick to best match. Save yourself the time. Don't worry about the hot right now. Stick to best match. You really need to have the right match for you, so stick to best match. Okay, let's scroll through and see what we have. Really cute hats here. I love the soft and cushy hat by Pearl Soho. Pearl Soho has some fantastic free patterns too, by the way. I love this one. So I'm going to open this one up. This appeals to me a lot. It does have some ribbing in here, which is a very beginner friendly design element, but I'm okay with that. I feel comfortable with that. Actually, it kind of looks to me like these little blue ovals, like I mentioned, these tell you what attributes are featured in this particular pattern. It is knit from the bottom up in the round, 1 piece. There's no seaming. It is ribbed. It is seamless. And it is a written pattern. It's not charted. So these are some of the attributes that can help you determine if this is going to be right for you. So these things are fine. This looks good. All of the other details about the pattern can be found right here. it's going to give me suggested yarn. This is just suggested yarn. You do not have to use that yarn. If you'd like to know how to substitute yarn, if you don't want to use what is suggested in a pattern, I have a video for that. I will pop a link up in the top of the screen, but you do not have to use that yarn. You can use whatever works, or whatever you have. Okay, what I love about this particular pattern page on Ravelry is it provides you with a lot of information up front before you download anything. It gives you the materials that you need and how much of each of those things that you're going to need. It gives you the colors that are being used, obviously the gauge that you're going to need to knit to. It gives you sizes, it gives you measurements, and then it gives you information about the people who designed it. The more information a pattern gives you on the Ravelry pattern page, the better if you're a beginner knitter. Designers don't have to provide you with all of that information here, but as a beginner knitter who's just starting out their, pattern search journey, it is nice to find patterns that do have a lot of that upfront information for you. And then I'm going to go over here to the far right, and I'm just going to check out some of these ratings. This is ratings about the particular yarn. I'm not going to worry too much about that. If you'd like to use the yarn that is suggested here, you can learn a little bit more about it right here. I just want to know about the pattern. I see the average difficulty rating is about this. These are 58 ratings that determined that, so I can kind of see where people fell in terms of difficulty. Most people here put this at a level 2. Second majority was a very easy level 1. In terms of clarity, 51 users thought it was very clear, and the overall ratings for this pattern, 45 users loved it. And that's great and very helpful. Okay, I'm going to check the comments here to see if there's anything that stands out. Things are very... Okay, interesting. This hat keeps growing and growing. The sizing seems to be off. Now, that person's having an issue. It's probably a fiber content issue. And then we have a response from the designer here who's giving information about that problem and possibly how to solve that problem. That's something to look for here. So I might want to know, okay, wow, like this person's having an issue. What's the solution? What did the designer suggest? Keep scrolling down. I'm having trouble understanding the crown portion, the setup round, and then the knit 3 together. Do I purl 1, knit 1, then purl 1, knit 3 together all the way around? Interesting, very helpful. This person's having an issue with a particular part of the hat. It's great that this person asked a question, and what's even greater is that Purl Soho got back to them with an answer that gives them clarity and lets them understand what it is that they need to do there. That's important. Okay, and then project pages. This is where you can go and see other folks' versions of this particular hat. So you've got lots of different projects here that you can choose from to see how it fits other people. Maybe you want to see how it looks on a man or on a woman or on a child. You want to get all of these different ideas of what the hat's going to look like once you knit it. This is a good jumping off point for that. So check out other people's project pages, and then some people leave really great detailed notes of their project, and that can be really helpful. That's helped me a lot of times on knitting projects. Not a lot of notes right here. I mean, people don't have to do that, right? But if they do, it's super helpful. Just gives you a little bit more of an insight. So definitely check out other people's project pages. Explore all of this in your own time, guys. Obviously, I'm limited in time, but you definitely want to just get onto Ravelry and explore these things that I'm mentioning here and allow that to work for you as a tool, really. So looking at other people's project pages is important. Okay, now that I've done all of that, I feel pretty good about downloading this pattern. It's available for free. I'm going to go ahead and click on the link here, and I think it's going to just take me to Purl Soho's website, where they host a lot of these free patterns right there. Okay, so here we are, the soft and cushy hat. Now, of course, this is going to give you options for purchasing their yarn. You don't have to, you can. Purl Soho yarn is beautiful. But if you scroll down, you will find the pattern, and this is a great place. Now, all of this information I'm scrolling past right now as a beginner might be very helpful for you. This is giving you background and context for this design. So you might want to read over that. But for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and scroll through it, but I'm not doing that because it's not important. I'm just doing that for time. So we're scrolling down to where the actual pattern begins. It's like looking at like a recipe on a food blog. You have to scroll past like the whole, story and photos and stuff, which is helpful, but sometimes you just want to get to the recipe. Okay, so it shows you the yarn, the materials. The colors are just insane. Purl Soho yarn is just luscious. Okay, so here it gives you all of the materials you're going to need. It links to all of that stuff if you'd like to purchase your supplies from them. It gives you the colors of the project in each of those colors. Oh my God, you guys. Pardon me. Okay. Then it gives you gauge. This is going to tell you the gauge that you need to achieve in order to knit the hat to the proper size. There's, gauge is a whole separate video. Oops. So we're not going to go into detail about that here, but it does provide you with that information. It gives you the sizes. It gives you construction notes. It gives you information for abbreviations. So some of the things you're going to want to look for in a knitting pattern is if they are using abbreviations, you want to make sure they're explaining what those abbreviations are. Most knitting patterns are going to do that for you, but you really want to make sure when you're browsing through that pattern before you start, you want to make sure all of those abbreviations are clear and explained for you. So they're not only telling you what K1B stands for, knit one below, they're also giving you instructions on how to execute that particular stitch technique. And then we start the pattern. And here is the pattern. You can look through this pattern and see if everything kind of seems easy to understand, easy to read. Scroll through it, print it out, highlight it. If there's wording or terminology that is confusing to you, take note of it. Maybe do a quick YouTube search to see if there's a video that goes along with that. Perhaps the designer has tutorial videos that goes along with their pattern. Don't underestimate the power of a tutorial video, of a photo tutorial, because they help. So read through, you can see how the pattern is laid out for you here. It's a pretty short pattern. I mean, you have the crown, you begin, you have the crown, and then you have your finishing. It's a basic beanie, so it's not going to have a very long pattern. And there you go. And what's great about this and the way that the pattern is featured on a website is I think you might be able to read comments that folks have left. Yeah, down here, you're going to be able to read through comments, reviews, things that people have said or asked about this particular pattern, which also is a whole nother thing. Using Purl Soho's free pattern database is excellent for that very reason. You can just search through their free patterns, read the pattern right then and there, and then you can read people's comments on that pattern, which can be very enlightening and helpful. So that is there for you as well. So this pattern, I would look at this as a beginner and I would think, okay, everything here, I can understand what it says. There are some words and terminology maybe I'm not familiar with. I can Google or YouTube search those. I feel confident that this gives me a good place to start. It's clear. There are places for me to ask questions. It makes you feel confident. So this would be a pattern that works for you. And that's what's great about free patterns is you can kind of determine all of that without having to commit to spending money on a particular pattern. You guys, that was a lot. I know there's a lot to unpack there. I hope you took something from that. I really enjoyed sharing that with you. Thank you again so much for taking the time to spend this time with me here. Drop me some comments down below. Let me know what you took away from this video or any other tips that you might have for folks that are just starting out on their knitting journey. Again, if you took anything away from this video, enjoyed yourself at all, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe, click the bell icon so you can be notified anytime I upload new content, which is every Wednesday and every Sunday. And until I see you again for Wednesday's episode of the Midweek Ramble, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.